All right, let's just jump right into it. Have you ever been stuck on hold with customer service and thought to yourself, this is literal torture? Well, in Voltaire Bulgakovsky's incredible satirical story, The Devil's Customer Service Line, that isn't just a funny metaphor. It is objective reality. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're exploring a universe where pitchforks and lakes of fire have been completely swapped out for flickering fluorescent lights, endless gray cubicles, and the absolute soul-crushing drudgery of corporate bureaucracy. It's hilarious, but man, it's also a surprisingly deep look at the systems we all live in every day.
And I love this because the whole premise is set up perfectly by this memo from the CEO of Hell Inc., Lucifer Morningstar himself. He writes, "Hell is not Comcast, we have standards." You see, a joint audit between heaven and hell just dropped some pretty terrible news on his desk. Hell's customer satisfaction ratings are completely tanking. The damned aren't feeling, sufficiently tortured anymore. Instead, they're just bored and frustrated, kind of like they're dealing with their internet provider. And for Lucifer, that level of mediocrity is just absolutely unacceptable.
So, that brings us to Section 1, Hell as Corporate Bureaucracy.
To really understand this world, we have to meet our main guy, Malphas. He's this profoundly exhausted mid-level demon with 4 bloodshot eyes and off-brand leathery wings. He has literally spent the last 643 years trapped in a cubicle, keeping himself awake with this awful Shikori-adjacent break room coffee. His whole existence? It's just dealing with the most entitled, recently damned souls you can imagine. Think of people like Barbara Fletcher, a woman who demands to speak to a manager in hell because she was a PBS donor in life. Bulgakovsky brilliantly modernizes Dante's classic circles of hell, mapping them directly onto corporate departments. Check this out. The first circle, limbo, that's now first contact resolution. Lust is billing, gluttony is tech support, where the literal solution to eternal torment is just turning your existence off and back on again. Greed handles complaints, which happens to be where Malphas works. And wrath is the lost souls department, which is essentially just a perfect infinite loop of missing paperwork. It's such an agonizingly spot-on satire of corporate structures.
Moving on to Section 2. The SIN protocol. So, this delicate little ecosystem of bureaucratic misery gets completely turned upside down when hell brings in a consultant. Enter Mammon Synergistics, this deeply unmenacing guy rocking a charcoal suit and, I kid you not, an airport kiosk tie. He's there to streamline operations with his grand master plan, the SIN protocol, which stands for Systematic Improvement of Nightmares. It is just jam-packed with all those ridiculous corporate buzzwords we all love to hate, like process mapping, workflow optimization, and key pain indicators. And to make things infinitely worse, Malphas gets saddled with this overly eager transformation partner named Zaffin. Zaffin is this young demon who has absolutely zero respect for personal boundaries, throws around the word synergy constantly, and literally thinks taking notes on Malphas's bathroom breaks is a best practice. It is a total nightmare for our poor, tired hero.
Which leads right into Section 3, the Age of Bespoke Torment.
Things finally reach a breaking point. Malphas is on a call with this guy, Kevin Pomaro, an obnoxious middle manager who's actually complaining that his generic hellfire is, well, boring. Now, Kevin's earthly sin was putting profit margins above human lives and probably using the phrase circle back about 1,000 times too many. Out of pure frustration, Malphas accidentally innovates. Instead of the standard fire and brimstone, he creates a bespoke punishment tailored exactly to Kevin. He sentences him to eternal, completely meaningless corporate meetings with no agenda, endless email chains, and absolutely zero actual power. He takes Kevin's earthly sins and just weaponizes them into this highly personalized artisanal suffering.
And he doesn't stop there. Take Margaret Henderson, for example. She was a librarian whose main sin in life was this passive-aggressive book club tyranny, ruining The Great Gatsby for everyone else just to make herself feel intellectually superior. So what does Malphas do? He sentences her to actually write the masterpiece she always dreamed of, only to have it eternally reviewed and dismissed as pedestrian by readers with incredibly terrible taste. It's this brilliant micro-narrative of targeted psychological devastation that forces her to confront her own hypocrisy.
Well, the results of this new artisanal approach are completely staggering. By week 2 of the SIN protocol, the metrics are off the charts. We're looking at a 31% increase in calls resolved with total demoralization and a massive 47% spike in employee misery. Malphas's accidental stroke of genius becomes the new gold standard down there. As a result, he is horrifyingly cursed with the title of Employee of the Month, officially making him the poster child for hell's newly optimized underworld.
But there's a flip side to this. Let's look at Section 4, the cost of empathy.
This is exactly where the workplace satire shifts into something a lot heavier. Malphas starts to realize that paying such close attention to the people he's damning takes a terrible psychological toll. This quote right here just hits like a ton of bricks. "I optimized their suffering and called it engagement." Malphas hears this from a recently damned soul named Emily, who he finds crying in a stairwell. In life, she was a social media marketer who pushed fake detox teas on vulnerable people. Her earthly job of manipulating metrics and optimizing suffering, it was practically identical to Malphas's infernal job. Hearing her confess that really forces Malphas to take a long, hard look in the mirror. The horrifying realization here is that damnation is just a massive, self-perpetuating system. Later on, while grabbing a drink at a bar called the Ninth Circle, Malphas and his cynical coworkers realize that both the torturers and the tortured are really just cogs in the exact same machine. They're all just perpetuating these broken systems of misery to meet some arbitrary quotas. By personalizing the torment, Malphas was forced to actually exercise empathy. And here's the thing, once you start seeing the damned as real, complex human beings, you can't just unsee them.
And that brings us to Section 5, the broken system.
Because his metrics are so good, Malphas gets called up to the executive suite by Lucifer and the HR director Lilith. They hand him a priority test case to prove to Heaven that Hell's intake system is actually flawless. If he fails this, Heaven takes over Hell's operations entirely. They hand him the file for Elizabeth Thorne. Her mortal sin index is sitting at an incredibly low 2.1. Elizabeth was a fundamentally decent, completely exhausted pediatric oncologist who spent her entire life fighting childhood cancer. And yet, inexplicably, she wound up in hell. Malphas is tasked with figuring out what terrible sin she committed to justify being there, and then he has to design a bespoke torment to break her.
But when he actually sits down to interview her, he can't find a single malicious act. It's actually Lilith, the HR director, who reveals the horrifying truth about triage. Elizabeth is damned because she worked in an underfunded hospital and had to make impossible choices about who got limited medical resources. She literally had to decide who got a chance to live and who didn't, based on cold cost-benefit analyses. She's being punished purely for participating in a flawed, resource-starved medical system.
As Lilith explains it to Malphas, Elizabeth's crime was the quiet sin of going along with a broken system because fixing it was impossible. This is the heavy thematic core of the whole story. Hell isn't full because people are inherently evil monsters. It's full because human beings are complicit in inescapable, broken earthly systems. They are forced to make impossible choices every single day just to survive, and the universe turns around and punishes them for it.
This leads us to our final act, Section 6, filing the impossible appeal. Malphas is now staring down the ultimate dilemma. If he damns Elizabeth, he is perpetuating the ultimate injustice, punishing a good person just because she was trapped in a bad system. But if he refuses, he fails the audit. Heaven takes over and the only world he knows is destroyed. This forces our guy into a real hero's journey. Step 1, he actually starts seeing the damned as individuals. Step 2, he recognizes the profound injustice of a system that damns people for trying to survive. And Step 3, he makes the choice to fight that system anyway. The tired, apathetic demon who just wanted to sip his cold coffee in a cubicle finally chooses to care. He risks eternal wrath for a single human soul. Which brings up a really profound question for us to chew on. Is justice just perpetuating a system? Malphas realizes that the rules of hell, and honestly maybe the rules of our own world, are just designed to optimize output and maintain the status quo, regardless of what's actually fair. So we have to ask ourselves, are we just mindlessly enforcing rules and hitting our KPIs, or are we actually seeking real justice? To wrap up our explainer today, we see Malphas making his final defiant choice. He marches off clutching this obscure piece of bureaucratic paperwork, Form 404B, and heads straight for the mythical Department of Miraculous Exceptions over in Building Infinity. He's filing an impossible appeal against reality itself, and as he sets off on this doomed but incredibly noble quest, it really leaves us to ponder our own lives. What broken systems are we complicit in every single day? And when will we finally decide to file an impossible appeal of our own? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this deep dive into the corporate underworld leaves you looking at the systems around you in a completely new light. Catch you next time.